Hello, and welcome to A San Francisco Conservative here on KSFO Radio. I'm Tom Martin, your co-host. I'm a lifelong journalist coming to you from the East Coast. I've produced stories for ABC Good Morning America, CBS News Sunday Morning, even covered the White House for a year for the Nightly Business Report on public television. I love meeting interesting people and having thought-provoking conversations, and that's exactly what we do right here. And my co-host is author David Parker, who is right there in San Francisco. David is the author of Income and Wealth and Rome 476. His essays appear quite frequently in the Epoch Times, Bay Area edition, and nationwide. And David is joining us right now. Hey, David, how are you?
Hi, Tom. Good morning. It's a nice day.
Good day. Good to see you, sir. I love your essays, and I wanted to kind of just jump right out of the gate and zero in on one that you shared with me very recently. And this has to do with the environment. And, here I am coming to you from Connecticut and kind of East Coast liberalism and all that kind of deal. And people are very concerned about global warming and, saving all kinds of things. And I just thought that your essay was very, very thought-provoking. I mean, for starters, you're not a fan of Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. Let's just get that out in the open here.
Well, it's disingenuous. He must really believe it, but it's I call global warming, the solutions to global warming, partisan politics. It's really progressives who are on top of all of this, and their anxiety about the market and allowing the market to solve its own problems just pours over into the environment. The market can't possibly solve the environmental problems. and they're so sure of that they decided that all the science that backs up their opinion is proof positive. There's nothing more to talk about. And someone told me to get this book called The Climate Book by Greta Thunberg. And I'm reading it, and she says, we have to act now. The Earth is only got a few days left. The Earth is we're doomed. Civilization is doomed. That's the tone of the book. And there's no market solutions to that. There's no And there's no technology solutions in the book either. I haven't got that far.
She's a sweet little girl. You're not going to come down on a sweet little girl, are you?
Oh, no. I like the way, in fact, I like the way she writes. She kind of talks like me. I mean, if I were a progressive, I would talk like that too. I mean, I like the way she writes. And I was at a public school for my grandchildren for a festival, and they have quotations of Greta Thunberg all over the walls. And they're getting the kids psyched up. You are the future leaders. We have to stop production and take charge. Don't just sit around and talk about it. Do it. That's her main message. Do it. Wow. Take control of the economy and stop manufacturing.
So are you suggesting this is propaganda and brainwashing and all that kind of thing?
She doesn't believe it, so it's not propaganda in that sense. What the schools are doing is brainwashing, because the schools, and certainly in San Francisco, are progressive. They're brainwashing in a sense. They downplay the founding fathers and they upplay the marginalized citizens of the world or of the nation. And there's signs to unite. It's anxiety-ridden is my theme, and Al Gore is anxiety-ridden, as all progressives are. They just can't believe you could use tort law. Someone who's harmed, everyone has a right to clean air and water. That's a law we have in the nation that I support.
Okay.
And so if your clean air and water and land is being violated, you sue. Not the government, you sue. You can't go to court unless you are personally being harmed.
Yeah.
That's the law. I mean, a court will throw out the case if it's not you who's being harmed. And that's it. You work it out with a manufacturer. There's what's called the Coase theorem. At 23 years old, or some very young age, you won a Nobel Prize that says people can work things out for themselves. The market works things out. If your factory is polluting, the factory will pay everybody around to leave. or people all around will pay the factory to leave,
Yeah.
or you'll work out some compromise. But that's how the market does it.
Yeah.
And the other thing, while I'm talking, is it's a downplaying technology. There are all kinds of firms, especially here in San Francisco Bay Area, that are working on ways, literally, to remove CO2 from the atmosphere.
Wow. Well, I think perhaps even when I was in school, which was a rather long time ago, I think Earth Day had been declared right around then, in the 70s, if I recall correctly, and they were saying it's like 1 minute till midnight as far as the environment, the future of the planet. So it's not really 1 minute till midnight, apparently.
It's so disingenuous. He has I read the book and I saw the movie. I don't remember in the book, but in the movie, I remember the scene where he rents a cherry picker, for like the PG&E or electric companies to go. They're high wires. They put a guy in a box and a crane shoves him up way up there. So Al Gore got one of those cherry pickers, and at the bottom is where his graph was, what the level of CO2 was historically, and today. He had to get in that cherry picker to go above the curtain, beyond the lights, beyond the ceiling look how high CO2 is today.
That's amazing.
This is so clear. There's nothing to talk about. And I say it's disingenuous because his graph goes back a few years and he shows a rise. The rise is approximately 278 parts per million to 417 parts per million. And he shows it as huge. It's actually not very big at all. If you take that graph and go back to the Arctic warming or go back to the Ice Age, it's a blip.
Wow.
CO2.
I apologize for interrupting, but for decades now, I've been hearing about how, the Arctic ice caps are melting and the icebergs are melting and polar bears are vanishing. I saw a commercial for the Sierra Club on TV earlier today.
It's all panic and false. Let me just finish that.
Sorry.
CO2 in the past was 10 times higher than it is today. Even at times during the Ice Age, we are living at a relatively low moment of CO2 in the atmosphere, and it's not doomsday, for one. And the UN panel on climate change had one person on there who said, I think maybe we should look a little closer at the data. They threw him off immediately. We're not discussing this. Most climate research institutions are not discussing the science. The science is given. And in fact, we're living at a low point and the technology will remove it. And then they use false. You talked about the polar bears. In the 60s, they were down to around 6,000. Look they're almost extinct. Today, they're 32,000.
Wow, amazing.
And the Sierra Club and whoever wants to use them, keeps using it because little children relate to the polar bears, and they probably give them little bears in their classrooms.
Okay, well, we'll talk about all the lions and tigers and bears, oh my, in just a minute. But we need to take a break right now.
Very good.
This is a San Francisco Conservative, right on KSFO Radio. Tom Martin and David Parker, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Hello, and welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative, right here on KSFO Radio. I'm Tom Martin, longtime journalist here out on the East Coast, and my co-host is right there in San Francisco, author David Parker. David is author of Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. He's a true Renaissance man, educator, jazz musician, investor, and entrepreneur, and author, first and foremost. And so we're talking about the environment. And David, I don't mean to sound like an East Coast guy, but there's signs all around us. I mean, a friend of mine is from Cleveland, and I keep seeing these pictures of the Cuyahoga River on fire. I mean, that can't be good.
No, that's a warning sign. We better jump on that right now.
Exactly.
And I think that happened in the 1960s. And it was a turning point, and the state of Ohio did jump on that, and they corrected the factories, recklessly throwing chemicals into the river, and it caught on fire. It's a spectacular fire, and they've been showing that fire ever since. Look at what's happening. Look what industry does to nature.
Yeah, so it must just be getting worse, I assume.
Yeah, getting worse all the time, when in fact it was cleaned up. They don't have those fires. The river is clean today, but no. They keep showing that thing. Like the polar bears, they know that the 6,000 jumped back up to 32,000, but they keep saying it's 6,000. So they use what they want. There's a case in Colorado of I guess women flushing birth control pills down the sink. They didn't want it, or whatever exactly. But that's really bad for streams. Birth control pills. It kills fish and it neuters male. It does all kinds of very bad things. And the Sierra Club is all over Colorado, and they refuse to address that subject because that's just too. Because so many other members are birth control women. They just wouldn't touch that subject, and in fact, it's a major issue. That's how disingenuous they are. It's anxiety, and it's nervousness, and it's fear of the market, and the ends justify the means. We can say or do whatever we want because our goal is so important.
Yeah,
That's what Che Guevara said when he murdered hundreds of property owners with a pistol to their brain personally, because he knew in his heart that he was onto something really special. Communism. Not unrelated.
Yeah. So you'd mentioned a commission, an environmental commission that has no room for discussion. They say this is the way it is, and if you don't agree with it, we're kicking you out. That's troubling.
There have been many professors throughout the nation who have lost their position or have been ostracized, and no one. Don't raise your hand in discussion. We're not interested in what you have to say. The science is clear, and you're just diverting attention away from solving the problem. And it's just that anxiety. But what's happening, there's been several prominent Nobel physicists have stood up and says the statistics aren't there. That climate change is so complicated. Maybe it's one of the most complicated nonlinear subject matters in terms of reasoning. 95% of the atmosphere is water vapor. Methane is worse than carbon dioxide, and methane is on the increase. Every cow that burps throughout the world, there's billions of cows. No one's talking about that. The head of environmental studies program at UC Berkeley, and the former head of Greenpeace, he resigned because he couldn't stand the people who were working for Greenpeace anymore in their red berets and their 60s activism. That's when Greenpeace actually did their job. They did a good job, and they're looking for a fight and saying anything. He resigned. Patrick Moore is his name, a doctor also, and the head of environmental studies in Berkeley, testified before Congress that the statistics aren't there, that they've changed their mind. We can't say, we don't know if CO2 is the cause of global warming. It's just not there. Not there enough. You can make a statement, stop the factories. Right now, we have 3 days before doomsday, as Greta Thunberg is talking. And citizens stand up and bring this nation back to the Middle Ages. Follow the Stern report from the UN International Climate Change Panel, whatever it's called. Nonsense, nonsense, nonsense.
Well, you've been having some unusual weather out there in California, so isn't that related to climate change?
If the weather is good or bad or neutral, it's all climate change.
Yeah.
You don't need statistics. If you had, California has no drought at the moment. We're pouring about 700 billion gallons of water into the sea. Fresh water. We don't have reservoirs. Nobody can think that far to save that water. And we've had, for several years in a row, and in the teens, 2012, 13, 14, California and the United States, maybe the world, went through a ferocious cold spell. And climate change, people say, that's climate change. It's erratic. Who knows? Even though there's been no real increase in hurricanes and cyclones, if it's a cyclone, it's global warming. Even though they would have happened anyway. There's no real increase. It's all disingenuous use of statistics, like Al Gore's cherry picker. It's not a huge rise. It's a blip. If you go back, put the graph back further.
Wow. And what inspired you to write this book? I guess we just have about a minute in this segment, but what inspired you? So you're working on a book about the environment, right?
Right. Well, I got enthused, carried away with Ronald Coase. He wrote some at a very young age. Wrote how a market can solve all problems, and especially the environment. His theme was environment. One of the themes that polluters and people being affected by pollution can work it out.
Yeah, well, I guess we should find that encouraging, right? So
yeah.
Have a couple more questions for you about this, and we'll pick up on that in segment 3 of This is a San Francisco Conservative, right here on KSFO Radio. Tom Martin, journalist, along with David Parker, author, and we will come back in just a moment.
In the heart of the vibrant city by the bay, meet a voice that's challenging the status quo. David Parker, author of A San Francisco Conservative and Rome 476. David Parker, a true San Franciscan with a conservative vision for the future, is a voice that resonates with our nation's founding fathers. Freedom from government, not with government. For 40 years, he taught in San Francisco's inner-city schools, acquired a large real estate portfolio, and worked as a professional musician. The Dave Parker Sextet performs every week. It's time for a fresh perspective, one that values fiscal responsibility, individual responsibility. David Parker is not only an academic, his thumb is on the pulse of the economy. He brings real solutions to all the problems affecting our nation. Learn more at davidparkeressays.com and get a free chapter to any of his books, A San Francisco Conservative, Rome 476, and Income and Wealth. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Hello and welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative on KSFO Radio. This is Tom Martin, journalist on the East Coast here, and my co-host is author David Parker right there in San Francisco. David, again, is the author of A San Francisco Conservative, Income and Wealth, and Rome 476. And today we've been talking about the environment. And, again, David, I spent a lot of time living in Washington, D.C., got my start in journalism there in D.C. And, a lot of the people that I would run into there said we really should applaud corporations that take some sense of, responsibility. And, if the water is dirty, if the skies are dirty, they devote part of their revenue to cleaning these things up. And surely you'd support that, right?
Certainly not. Milton Friedman, one of my favorite economists, in a competitive business environment, those corporations are guaranteed to fail. It's so hard to make a profit. Efficient market hypothesis is I discussed in my first book, Income and Wealth. In a competitive environment, there is no profit. It's like on a freeway. The traffic is backed up. If one lane starts to move, don't jump into that lane. Just stay where you are, because everybody jumps into that lane, and in 5 seconds, it's exactly where you were. If you keep your eye on that white truck in front of you, at the end of 20 minutes, that truck is still in front of you, no matter what changes you did. In business, if some company is making a little above average profit, other companies jump in, just like on the freeway. And pretty soon that company is right back to very close to zero. When a company starts, there's entrepreneurial compensation. Yes, you make a lot of money if you're the first guy on the block with a product. And a CEO who maybe gets 2 or 300 million even. It's not salary. He's getting paid a percentage of the increase in revenue that he or she personally generated. Like an athlete, salaries are negotiated as a percent of the revenue that athlete generates for the company. If you took Curry off the Warriors team, attendance would drop. And how much would it drop? Some percentage. That's him, and that's his salary. That's how it's generated. So if you take your mind off production, you're going to lose. If you're worried about inclusivity and equity and employment and an outcome, you're taking your mind off your product. Yeah. So Milton Friedman says it very clearly. We're all human beings. If employees and also the owners of companies, they're human beings. They have families. They have children. They don't want to see the world polluted. As individuals, they donate to whatever organization they like. Nature Conservancy, Sierra Club, any organization that you like, you personally donate. That's what it means to live in a free economy where government is not involved in the lives of its citizens.
Yeah. Well, I think here in the New York City area where I live, I not long ago, I heard Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez say that we should really applaud these companies that boldly, put their money where their mouth is and says, the rivers are dirty. We need to clean them up. We're using, they put this in their advertising and that kind of thing. And so now you're telling me that, and basically she says that pure capitalists who follow the program that you're describing are kind of heartless. I mean, what do you say to that?
Why should they be? They're human beings. As I said, the owners and CEOs and owners of companies and stockholders, they're all human beings. They live in a home, they have children. It's a real elitism. It's progressive elitism to think that only progressives care about the environment. Only progressives care about the less fortunate. But the distinction between conservative and liberal is, how do we solve the problem? Conservatives say the market will solve the problem. If you live in a free country, you go with it. Social, political, economic freedom. There's plenty of ways for markets to solve problems. And just, if you don't believe it, leave. At the beginning of the Revolutionary War, Thomas Jefferson said, we're going to have a nation here with no king or queen, unheard of in the world history at that point. The government's so small, you won't see it. And everyone has the vote, regardless of social or status or wealth. And if you're afraid of that, you're afraid of democracy. Leave. And thousands of people fled to Canada. This is unheard of. It's the same thing now. If you're afraid that citizens can't solve problems, that citizens don't care, that corporations don't care, you're in the wrong country, because it's just not true.
Well, what
Just not
about,
true.
well, isn't there ever a role for the government to step in? I mean, I think of, over the past couple of years, we've heard about Flint, Michigan, how the water is so contaminated, little children are dying. I mean, don't you think, every once in a while, maybe there is a place for government to step in?
If the market is not solving the problem, the government can step in and push the market to and threaten the market. If you don't solve this problem, we're going to solve it. That's a legitimate use, a threat, or a cleaner-upper of last resort. But Michigan is a city. Don't they have a city council? Can't the city council say, we shouldn't allow this? Obviously, the city council allowed it. And like I said before, no one's allowed to sue for a tort violation unless that person is affected.
Mm-hmm.
All the citizens of Flint, Michigan were affected. They can do a class action suit, stop that corporation from polluting or whatever the problem with the water in Flint, Michigan was, to stop it, or clean it up, or tax themselves to make a better processing plant, whatever needed to be done. Yeah. That's a simple example of how a market can solve that problem.
No, I like, I find great examples of that in your books, and I certainly encourage everyone listening to our show here to check out your books. I think we're out of time for today, but again, a very stimulating conversation. I really appreciate your thoughts. This is A San Francisco Conservative with Tom Martin, and right there in San Francisco, author David Parker. Again, David is the author of Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. You can read about David's books on his website, davidparkeressays.com. That's davidparkeressays.com. You can catch his column almost every week in the Epoch Times, Bay Area edition, and nationwide. And actually, if you're curious, you can go to David's website and download a free chapter from A San Francisco Conservative. So thanks, David. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. Good questions, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.